On June 3rd, 2026, Donald Trump sat down for a podcast interview and delivered a statement worth remembering. He said Iran had already agreed to abandon nuclear weapons. He called that the big victory. Then he went further, describing Iran as a nation with no navy, no air force, barely any soldiers, no leadership, and an economy drowning under 250% inflation. And if that's all you heard that morning, you could be forgiven for thinking America had already won. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because on that exact same morning, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched approximately 30 ballistic missiles and drones directly at Kuwait. Terminal 1 of Kuwait International Airport was struck. 1 civilian died. 63 others were wounded. All commercial flights were grounded. And before the day was over, Iran's foreign ministry formally suspended every ongoing negotiation with the United States. Not paused, suspended. A senior military advisor to the supreme leader then posted publicly that any further American military action would be answered with a barrage of missiles and drones. So on one side, a sitting president declaring Iran broken and finished. On the other, ballistic missiles shutting down an international airport and all diplomacy severed. Both cannot be true. And for the next few minutes, I want to show you exactly why one of them is dangerously wrong. Subscribe to Frontline Pulse if you're new, because this is the analysis you won't find anywhere else. The question dominating every major broadcast is whether America can force Iran into surrender. That is the wrong question. The right one, the one that will define the next decade of geopolitics, is this. Is Iran becoming the next North Korea? To understand what's actually unfolding, you need one framework, the North Korean blueprint. Ask yourself something simple. Why has the United States never attacked North Korea? Strip away the ideology. In terms of raw conventional power, American forces could theoretically dismantle North Korea's military within 72 hours. And yet Washington has never done it. The answer is elegant and terrifying. North Korea engineered a situation where the potential gains of any attack were completely overwhelmed by the consequences. Pyongyang didn't need to be stronger than America. It only needed to make attacking it not worth it. Raise the cost of intervention high enough, and even a superpower steps back and says, not today, not ever. That is the blueprint, and what we are watching in real time as of June 3rd, 2026, is Iran executing that same blueprint with remarkable precision. This is not desperation. This is a long-term plan unfolding exactly as designed. There are 4 conditions required to complete the North Korean model. The first is real nuclear deterrence. Before this war began, Iran was enriching uranium to 60%, technically sufficient to build a weapon, but had stopped short of crossing the final threshold. Nuclear scientists call this hedging. You stand at the door, but don't walk through. And that is precisely why the United States and Israel struck when they did. They understood that if Iran ever tested a functional nuclear device, every military option would evaporate. But here is the paradox no one in power will say out loud. By attacking Iran before it had nuclear weapons, Washington handed Iran the most powerful argument in history for why it must now obtain them. Libya gave up its nuclear program in 2003. Gaddafi was killed in 2011. Iraq never developed nuclear weapons. America invaded anyway. And now Iran itself was bombed while negotiations were still actively ongoing. What rational government looks at that sequence and doesn't conclude that the only reliable protection against American intervention is a nuclear weapon? A former American diplomat said it plainly on June 3rd. Before the war, Iran was not pursuing weaponization. After the war, they will. The bombing campaign launched to prevent Iran from going nuclear has almost certainly accelerated Iran directly toward nuclear weapons. This is the central contradiction of American strategy. The second condition is the permanent severance of Western diplomacy and the establishment of uncrossable red lines. In 2019, North Korea stopped all meaningful negotiations with Washington, then amended its own constitution to formally designate South Korea as a permanent enemy. The message was unambiguous. We want nothing from you, which means you have nothing left to threaten us with. Now look at what Iran did on June 3rd. The foreign ministry suspended all negotiations with the United States. No further dialogue until Israel permanently ceases all military operations in Gaza and Lebanon. The word permanently is doing enormous strategic work there, because that is a condition the United States cannot satisfy without fracturing its alliance with Israel. Iran knows this. This is not a negotiating position designed to be bargained down. This is a red line engineered specifically to be uncrossable. The deputy speaker of the Iranian parliament made the psychology transparent that same day. He said they trusted no promises from the Americans, that crimes had been committed against them in the most brutal way possible. That is not the language of a side searching for an exit. That is the language of a side that has decided it is fighting alone, indefinitely, on its own terms. The third condition is deep integration into the Russia-China-Eurasian axis, transforming sanctions from a weapon into an inconvenience. The petrodollar system, born in 1973, ensured all global oil was priced in dollars, creating perpetual artificial demand for American currency and allowing Washington to deploy financial sanctions against any challenger. Iran, Russia, and China are now dismantling this architecture piece by piece. China is currently importing 31% of Iran's total oil exports, paid in yuan, not dollars. Every barrel bypasses the American financial system entirely. Iran's domestic crypto exchange was processing over 50% of its digital capital flows in stablecoins by 2025, funds used to stabilize its currency and supply its military. When Washington tried to shut this down, Iran adapted, because cryptocurrency is architecturally designed to resist exactly that kind of interdiction. The BRICS Plus bloc, which now includes Iran, controls over 40% of global oil production and is building parallel financial infrastructure designed to operate entirely outside American oversight. And here is the devastating irony. By weaponizing the dollar, the United States has convinced every country in the developing world that they need an alternative. Brazil, India, South Africa, Saudi Arabia. All of them are watching what happens when you build your economy on American financial infrastructure and America decides to weaponize it against you. The sanctions regime designed to contain Iran is accelerating the very de-dollarization it was built to prevent. The fourth condition is the most strategically elegant: asymmetric deterrence that makes American victory unacceptably costly. North Korea deters the United States not by matching its power, but by maintaining one credible threat that transforms any confrontation into catastrophe. That threat is Seoul. 25 million people within range of thousands of North Korean artillery pieces. Washington cannot accept that outcome. Iran has engineered the precise equivalent at a global scale. The Strait of Hormuz, 33 kilometers at its narrowest, carries 20% of the entire world's oil and gas supply every single day. Japan depends on it for 75% of its energy. India, 60%. China, 40%. Iran has closed the strait, and the United States cannot reopen it. Now examine the economics. The Shahed drones Iran deploys cost at most $50,000 each. To intercept each one, the United States fires Patriot missiles, costing $1 million apiece, sometimes 2 or 3 per drone. As of June 3, 2026, the United States has consumed approximately 50% of its entire domestic Patriot interceptor stockpile. 50%. In a war against a country Trump says has no navy and no air force. Iran has decoded exactly what North Korea decoded before it. You don't fight expensively. You fight cheaply in the places that cause maximum pain. Pull back further, because this conflict is a visible symptom of a much larger historical pattern. Rome was not destroyed by external enemies. It collapsed through overextension, through the crushing cost of maintaining expanding frontiers, and through the disappearance of a unifying external threat. When Rome eliminated both Carthage and Greece in 146 BCE, something unexpected happened. 13 years later, Romans were killing each other in the capital. The pressure holding society together was gone. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. America's defining external threat vanished. And since that moment, the United States has turned inward with accelerating intensity, fighting itself in ways that deepen every decade. Analysts of historical cycles describe America as now in the late Republic phase, where democratic form is preserved, but actual functioning has grown increasingly imperial and internally fractured. The average lifespan of major global empires is approximately 250 years. The American Republic was founded in 1776. The year under discussion is 2026. This is not prophecy. It is a historical observation about patterns that have repeated across civilizations. And the symptoms are visible. European allies declining American coalitions. Gulf states quietly seeking separate accommodation with Iran. And the United States visibly failing to guarantee freedom of global maritime trade. This is not Pax Americana under stress. This is Pax Americana becoming history. Even if both sides wanted to stop, they cannot. The reason is structural psychology. The dominant strategic doctrine influencing the current American administration holds that any concession is a display of weakness, and weakness invites aggression. Trump has publicly declared Iran finished, leaderless, defeated. Within that framework, accepting a deal where Iran still controls the Strait of Hormuz and still operates a nuclear program is not compromise. It is public humiliation. The psychology locks him in. On the Iranian side, Shia theology places martyrdom at its moral core. When Iranian commanders were killed in American strikes, this was not experienced domestically as defeat. It was experienced as sacred sacrifice, activating religious obligation across the entire Shia world. The Iranian armed forces stated on June 3rd that they would defend the ideals of the Islamic Revolution to the death. That is not political rhetoric. That is theological commitment in military form. Two sides, both structurally locked into escalation, neither able to concede without existential domestic consequences. A former American diplomat said it plainly: there will not be peace. The best achievable outcome is an extended ceasefire, a pause before the next cycle begins. Two things to watch as this develops. First, any signal that Iran is moving beyond uranium enrichment toward actual warhead engineering. The moment Iran tests a nuclear device, the geopolitical calculation transforms completely. Military options become functionally impossible without risking permanent closure of the strait and collapse of global energy markets. Watch the IAEA quarterly reports. Watch for shifts in Iranian language around nuclear doctrine. Second, watch whether Saudi Arabia or the UAE breaks from the American position and signs a separate accommodation with Iran. When a government concludes that the American security umbrella can no longer protect it, it will act in its own interest, always. If that happens, American hegemony in the Middle East doesn't weaken, it ends. June 3rd, 2026 is not a news cycle. It is a historical marker. Two powers locked in a structural trap, neither able to concede, both rational within frameworks that are fundamentally incompatible. A smaller power executing a long-term blueprint with patience and discipline that the prevailing narrative completely fails to capture. The missiles that struck Kuwait that morning were not random acts of desperation. They were data points in a strategy decades in the making. If this gave you a clearer picture of what's actually happening, share it with someone still asking the wrong questions. Subscribe to Frontline Pulse and drop a comment below telling me which of the four conditions you think Iran is closest to completing. That is the conversation that actually matters.